You're watching Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. I'm Arirang. Now, US shoppers spent a record $9.12 billion online on Black Friday, according to Adobe Analytics. Online sales were up 2.3% compared to last year, with shoppers snapping up electronics, smart home equipment, toys and exercise gear in particular. And while sales were above expectation, there's still some pessimism as traffic in offline retail stores was slimmer, and the record sales were based on higher prices rather than the volume, and people shopped with buy now, pay later financing schemes. Now, shoppers everywhere, not just in the US, are worried about inflation, and we discussed today how this might impact their spending for the foreseeable future. For this, we invite Kirthi Kalyanam, Skaggs Distinguished Professor of Retail Management Institute at Santa Clara University, and Hee-dong, Professor of Business Administration at Ewha Women's University. A very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us today. And first of all, Professor Kalyanam, now, consumers spent a record $9.12 billion online during Black Friday this year over the weekend, and it was a 2.3% rise, but was this a significant increase?
I don't think this is a very significant increase, because in that 2.3%, there's a lot of inflation built in. So you could, after adjusting for inflation, it becomes very difficult to realize has sales really gone up or not gone up. So I'm not particularly encouraged by this. I think it's a very modest number.
I see, and it seems that a lot of Black Friday shoppers, those that normally queue outside the offline retail stores, the lines have been thinning in recent years, and indeed this year as well. And those out and about in stores this year said that they've actually been planning their purchases. So does this mean that Black Friday sales are actually losing significance in a sense? I mean, what does all of this mean for retailers?
Black Friday as an event has been slowly losing its importance for American retail over at least 10 years. And the main reason for this is that online retail sales have started to encroach on Black Friday. Most American retailers now start offering deals almost from the beginning of the 1st of November all the way to Black Friday. So Black Friday is no longer a specific event day that is people have to wait for. The whole thing has gone from a shopping week to a shopping month. This pattern intensified over the pandemic, where consumers pretty much learned how to shop online. So I think if you add all of this up, the amount of people queuing up outside retail stores is generally going down. I think people still go to retail stores to buy the categories that are difficult to buy online, like apparel and so on. But other than that, if people can buy online, I think on these days, they're going to buy online.
I see. And Professor Yang, well, China, the world's second largest economy, it also has a major shopping holiday in the month of November on what it calls Singles Day or Double 11 Day on November 11th. And usually Alibaba, they post their their Singles Day sales just to show how much they've made that year, and it's always record breaking. But this year, Alibaba Group opted not to disclose the final sales tally of its annual shopping festival for the first time. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, this day Alibaba is really struggling from both the internal and external the problems. For example, the last summer, Alibaba received a warning from SEC that this company will be delisted from New York Stock Exchange, because the Alibaba refused to submit the financial statement due to the alleged instruction from the Chinese government. So SEC will consider this December whether this Alibaba stocks will be delisted or not. And there was rumor that Jack Ma was missing, from the governance. So for the first time since year 2009, when this Singles Day event started, the Alibaba decided to disclose their final sales. But this is not that shocking, actually, because last year, the Alibaba recorded the best record of sales on this Singles Day with almost $90 billion. But the growth rate was about 8.5%. But 2 years ago, they had the growth rate over 85%. So there was suspicion that Alibaba sales will be almost in the top at the limit. And this year, there's a severe global competition from Amazon. And, there's a tension from the Chinese government over the Alibaba. There's the political, conflict between China and the U.S. And the domestic demand has been reduced in China. So due to all these reasons, Alibaba could not record a very decent sales increase this year. But many people expect that their sales may have been reduced this year. There's a report that the parcel and delivery service was reduced by 20%, right, in November. So yeah, Alibaba is really struggling, but I think their hard time will continue for a while, even in next year.
Right, given all the global sort of economic and geopolitical uncertainties that you were talking about, many countries have been struggling and a lot of consumers are feeling very pessimistic about their future prospects. And Professor Yang, South Korea had its own Grand Sale Festa throughout the month of November, as it usually does. And well, due to the weakened currency, it would then make sense for domestic products to do better, to actually sell more than imported goods. But was that really the case for South Korea?
Well, actually, the Korean government launched this event from November 1st through 15th. But at the moment, I don't have any numbers from this event in terms of the sales revenues from internet or wherever. But I do suspect that domestic product could have upper hands against imported goods due to the weakened Korean currency, because the consumption pattern has been very has been changed dramatically after COVID-19, because Korean consumers do care about the values. Well, a good example for this argument is the abrupt increase of luxury goods in Korea last year and this year. So last year, the luxury goods in Korean market have been increased by 30%. And this trend will also maintain this year as well. So, well, this argument, in other words, the domestic goods could be better than imported goods due to weakened Korean currency. And I think this is very simple suspicion based upon only the currency exchanges. But I think the Korean currency pattern has been a lot more sophisticated and complicated. So the value-based consumption is whether the recent trends and strong brands will maintain is a very handsome sales record. So, let's see what happens, but that this new trend will be maintained for a while in Korean consumption market.
I see. And Professor Kalyanam, now, no one can deny the power of US shoppers' wallets, really, their buying power. And, well, it seems that consumers this year, they used a buy now and pay later kind of financing for their purchases. Would you see that as good or bad news? And also, how are expectations of further interest rate hikes really weighing in on consumer sentiment?
You really have a two-part question, so I'm going to break the question down into two parts. And the first part you're asking is, what is the usage of buy now, pay later, and how is that going to play into the holiday shopping season? Overall, buy now, pay later has been growing. And I think most retailers have added it to their portfolio, and it is going to become an important part of the overall shopping mix. Some people are concerned that that entire payment system is a little bit very now mature, and it's going to peak out. There are two reasons why I believe that buy now, pay later may not necessarily be something that might increase even more than we are seeing, because the data from the US Federal Reserve shows that consumers are sitting in on a lot of cash right now. And in fact, one of the latest numbers that I saw was that overall households are sitting on about $7 trillion in savings. This is from the US Federal Reserve. If that's indeed true, they still have a lot of cash in hand, and they may not necessarily go to these buy now, pay later schemes. However, we are also seeing reports that says some amount of credit card balances are going up. So I see that the American consumer is slowly tipping from a point where they had a lot of extra savings and cash towards possibly a period where they're going to be leaning into a little more credit in the future. But the consumer balance sheet is pretty strong right now, and will probably move them through the holiday season. However, having said all of this, people are being very selective. There's a lot of sentiments among consumers that they're very concerned about the economy. And whenever that sentiment happens, that means retail spending becomes very, very careful. So right now, I think US retailers are in a competition with their consumers where they're both trying to run the clock and trying to see, some people call it a game of chicken, who's going to blink first. So consumers are waiting for retailers to cut prices more. Retailers are waiting for consumers to buy. And at the end of this day, they're all worried that if a significant recession kicks in the next 3 weeks, or if the economic data get worse, consumer spending will cut off even more. So it's right now a race to get this out of the way so that the holiday season is out of the way.
I see. And Professor Yang, well, consumer sentiment here in South Korea, the index weakened in November to 86.5 points, which is down by 2.3 points from a month earlier. And what kind of goods and services do you think are going to be hardest hit if there's this continued pessimism in consumer sentiment?
Well, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index in October, was 5.7%, which is 0.1% higher than the previous month. The major driver for this, the bounce back of the increase in the CPI came from the public utilities, such as electricity and faucet water and gas. And this sector, the price of this sector increased by 23% YOY, and increased by almost 8.8% from the previous month. So this is a dramatic increase. I mean, this is the large increase for the past almost 12 or 13 years. So, and this increase will make the rippling impact over all the areas across all the different goods and service sectors in Korean market, because in every industry, manufacturing, service, use, these public utilities. So, I mean, if you ask me what specifically, what kind of goods and services will be impacted from this price increase, I should say that this impact is not limited to any particular sectors, because the major driver for this price increase came from the public utilities. So I suspect that the consumption will be very reduced and very discouraged for a while, and it will be continued until the first quarter of next year. It will peak around May next year. And OECD estimated that our price increase will be about 5.2% this year, but it will be better about to 3.5 versus percent next year. So I do agree on the opinions of OECD as well.
I see. Professor Yang, well, there are continued worries about possible stagflation for the Korean economy, with predictions of a 1% growth in GDP next year. Now, what is your outlook on the consumption side of things, and what do you think are some policies that the Yoon government should really pursue to really sustainably boost the local economy?
Well, the OECD came up with a very negative predictions for this year and next year for economy. For example, this year they estimated, in last September, they estimated that our annual growth will be about 2.8%, but it is now downgraded to 2.7%. And next year, they expected that we will have about 2.2%, but it will downgraded to 1.8%. The major reason for this negative prediction is two very conflicting forces. First one is high interest rate and also high inflation. But the problem with those two forces is those two forces are, they contradict each other. In other words, the government is really, really struggling to catch up with those two contradictory forces. And in that case, we have to make, develop some priorities, decide the priorities among those two conflicting forces. Where personally, I think inflation is more serious threat for the Korean economy as in the United States. So that means the Korean economy will maintain very tight control over money flow. But again, the peak will be the next year in the first quarter. Predict that our interest rate will go up to 5% in the first quarter, but it will stay put throughout the remaining period, and it will go down to 3.5 or 3.75 next year. So that should be, I think, the government policy.
I see, and well, here's to hoping that our wages will be on par with the inflation. And well, I'm afraid this is where we have to wrap up today. That was Kirthi Kalyanam, Professor at Santa Clara University, and Hee-dong, Professor at Ewha Women's University. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for.
Thank you also to our viewers for tuning in. Global Insight will be back at the same time tomorrow here in South Korea. Do tune in then. Wherever you are in the world, have a great day or evening. Goodbye.